Now that we've discussed the macronutrients, carbohydrates, and protein, we're going to switch to the last macronutrient, fat. What's the skinny? We're going to start with what they are, the different types, what to eat and not eat, how much to eat, easy hacks, and end with practical takeaways. So fat is the most nutrient-dense macronutrient. It contains 9 calories per gram as opposed to 4 with carbohydrates and protein. It will break down into fatty acids and glycerol that can be used immediately for energy or stored as body fat. When we don't eat enough carbohydrates, remember that's our most preferred energy source for the body's going to turn to use protein or fat for energy. And we already learned how critical protein is in the body, so that's going to be our last choice to aim for using for energy. So we're going to now convert fat for energy. The body's going to break down fat cells or fat from our food into triglycerides through a process called lipolysis. Now, not all body parts can use fat for fuel, like the brain. But we can convert fatty acids into ketones, which the brain can use for fuel. So how do we classify fatty acids? Short chain, medium chain, and long chain. Short chain fatty acids are less than 8 carbons in length, and they're actually produced by the gut bacteria through the fermentation of fiber in our diet. It's the main source of fuel for our colon cells. Medium chain fats are 8 to 12 carbons in length. They're easier to digest and use for immediate energy, and they go direct to the liver for the conversion into ketones. These are things like your tropical oils, coconut, palm kernel, palm. And then the long chain fatty acids are over 12 carbons in length. They're the primary storage form of fat in our bodies. And these come primarily from vegetable oils and our animal protein fat. So what are the health functions of fat? Energy, long-term storage. We can't live very long without water. We can live a long time without food because of our fat storage capabilities. What fat does is it supports our cognitive and brain health because 60% of our brain is fat. So we need to nourish our brain with the right fuel for it to properly function. Fat also supports our connective tissue and our gastrointestinal tract. Before we get into the quality of fats, talking about which types should we eat versus not eat, I want to spend a little bit of time on the oils that we should be cooking with. This is a common question and concern that I get from clientele on a daily basis. It all comes down to smoke point. At what degree does that oil begin to smoke? In other words, burn and oxidize. That's happening at a deeper cellular level if we are allowing our oils to burn. So for that case, we want to strive for using oils that have a higher smoke point that are not going to burn at medium to high heat degrees, such as avocado, ghee, or if you can tolerate cow dairy, butter would fall in this category, coconut oil, and sesame oil. Now, what about extra virgin olive oil? We have heard so many wonderful things. That's the elite of the elite. There are a lot of great benefits to olive oil, but it has a very low smoke point. So we should not be cooking at medium to high heat with olive oil. Leave that for lower heat cooking. So marinades, salad dressings, drizzling. When you're done heating, you can drizzle the olive oil onto your food at that point. Macadamia nut and walnut oils should also be used at lower heats. When you're purchasing your oils, always strive to get them in dark glass bottles and store them in cool, dark places. That will keep it fresh and prevent it from being rancid or oxidizing. Okay, now let's talk about the different types of oils. If you've looked at the different packages, you'll see words like refined, unrefined, cold pressed, virgin, extra virgin. What does that mean? What should you select? We're going to talk about that right now. Refined oils mean that they are using heat and chemicals to remove any flaws in that oil. Now there's a pro and a con. The pro is that it's more stable, and so it's going to be better for higher heat cooking. The con is that this process destroys a lot of the health properties of the oil. Unrefined oils, maybe cold pressed, is not treated with heat and chemicals. It's using only pressure. This process does retain the minerals, enzymes, vitamins, and phytonutrients. Now I want to stop here for a moment because you'll see this in one case scenario in particular, and that would be your coconut oils. You'll see refined or unrefined or virgin. What do you pick? The refined oils, we know, have the con of the heat and the chemicals, but the pro is that you can use it more stably at higher heat temps, and it will not have that robust coconut flavor that your unrefined or virgin coconut oil will. So some people really despise that coconut taste, so the refined would be better in that case scenario. And there is one brand that I have found that does not use heat and chemicals to refine their coconut oil, and that's Nutiva. So there are some others out on the market as well. Virgin oil, that means it's unrefined and cold pressed, typically from the second pressing of the source of the oil. It's going to be more fragile, and it should be used for lower heat cooking, dressings, and drizzling. Extra virgin is unrefined and cold pressed from the first pressing of the source. So that's going to be the cleanest source, and it's going to be more fragile. So for sure, lower heat, no heat, room temperature, cool temps, you're going to be best using that oil for. All right, what do we eat? Quality, as we've been talking about all throughout these previous modules, matters. In the case of fat, what should we eat less of? What are those pro-inflammatory fats? Saturated, the processed polyunsaturated, and the trans fats. Your saturated fats are coming from animal products and tropical oils. Ideally, in regards to evidence for chronic disease risk, we want to keep our calories to less than 10% of our calories coming from these sources. Polyunsaturated, so these omega-6s are essential fats. We do need to get them in through our diet, but they tend to be more inflammatory in nature. These are going to be your traditional oils that are going to be less expensive, so used prevalently when we're processing foods, packaging foods, refining foods, as well as out in the restaurants. So corn, canola, soybean, grapeseed, safflower, and sunflower are examples of omega-6s. Trans fats are very chemically produced. There are small amounts naturally found in beef and dairy, but the majority of it is found in processed fried foods. Things like margarine and shortening, fried foods, desserts, treats, cookies, those types of items. The FDA did ban it in 2018 because of its increased risk for heart disease and diabetes. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't be in our food supply. The labeling laws put into effect that we have to see the amount of trans fat that is in a food. One thing you should know about labeling laws and food manufacturers are they're very smart. So when that was coming into effect, that they had to declare how much trans fat was in their food per serving, they adjusted their serving size. So they decreased the serving size so that they could report 0 trans fat, when in effect they can have up to 0.5 grams per serving and still state 0. So I'm going to give you a little clue and a tip in just a moment. And how do you know if there is trans fat? How do you read between those lines? So let's talk a little more about saturated fat and trans fat. Saturated fat in excess can create what's known as metabolic endotoxemia, and it's very pro-inflammatory. And that's through a compound called LPS, or lipopolysaccharide. It's a very potent inflammatory stimulant. Saturated fat has also been shown to stiffen our cell membrane. Now, we want some stiffness and rigidity to the cell membrane, but we also want the fluidity to get the nutrients in and to keep the waste products out. These long-chain saturated fats are harmful against the endothelial cells. Trans fat, the body just can't break it down. It's chemically produced through taking a liquid oil, putting it through a chemical process to make it solid. So it's actually one chemical molecule away from being plastic. So very hard for the body to process and utilize. Trans fat has been shown to irreversibly disrupt the cell membrane and alter its function. How do we know? How do you read between the lines? If the label says 0 trans fat, how do you know if it has it or not? Go into the ingredients, that's your truth. If you see that word hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, that means there is trans fat in the label. And your ingredients are going to be listed from greatest to least amount present. So look also where it sits in that ingredient list, but optimally and ideally you wouldn't see that word at all. These long-chain fatty acids are detrimental to metabolic health. It promotes metabolic inflammation and lipotoxicity. When we have too much fat in our diet, over 50% of our calories coming from fat, for a long period of time, that can also damage our mitochondrial health. High-fat diets create lipid peroxides, which create oxidative damage to our DNA and our proteins. So more is not better. Let's talk a little bit more about how fat is associated with this metabolic endotoxemia and lipopolysaccharides. These lipopolysaccharides are toxic when they cross the intestinal barrier and enter our circulation. That's what creates this internal toxic environment. Our unhealthy gut bacteria die and release these compounds. That's how it's created. And the conditions that have been associated with a high LPS level are all metabolic in nature. Obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, otherwise known as non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, neurodegenerative conditions, and autoimmunity. So how do we increase endotoxemia, which we do not want to do? Eat too many saturated fats. With sugar, the worst combination. How do we decrease? That's what we do want to do. Here's our fibers. Here's our plants. So prebiotics like asparagus, endive, sunchokes, jicama, eggplant, leeks, and onions. Sulforaphanes. These are the active compound found in your cruciferous vegetables, and they're going to be more potent and pronounced in broccoli sprouts. Omega-3 fatty acids, such as cold water fish, particularly your small fish. That's the smash fish that I was mentioning in an earlier module. So that's going to be your salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardines, and herring. Also ground flaxseed and walnuts. In regards to flaxseed, you need to make sure you grind it versus eating the whole seed, because the whole seed is hard to break down in the digestive tract. It's encapsulated. So it can actually cause a lot more disruption in regards to your GI function. So make sure it is ground, and you want to refrigerate it or freeze it to keep it fresh so it doesn't go rancid. What do we want to eat more of? What are our anti-inflammatory fats, the good guys? Another type of polyunsaturated fat called omega-3s, and your monounsaturated fats, omega-9s. Our omega-3s are also essential fats. We need to get them from an outside source, so through diet and or supplementation. These are going to be those oily smash fish, your flaxseed, even flax oil, and that certainly needs to be at a cold temperature when you use it. So maybe putting it into a smoothie or some oats, and chia seeds, as well as walnuts. Your monounsaturated fats, your omega-9s, are going to be the extra virgin olive oil, olives, avocado oil, avocados, almonds, pecans, pumpkin and sesame seeds. There's even pumpkin butter. So if you're not going to be doing peanut butter or almond butter, you do better with seeds, there is pumpkin butter and also sun butter. So now, how much do we eat? What they say, the Institute of Medicine suggests 20 to 35% of our calories. So again, let's keep it simple. Use that plate method so that you can see if about a quarter of your plate is consisting of fat, but remembering that there's going to be some used in the cooking process as well as in the food itself. Infants and young children need more because their brain is growing and developing at a rapid rate. So they may need closer to 40% of their total calories coming from fat. So what are some easy hacks? How do we get these healthy fats into our diet? Adding 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, chia seed, or hemp hearts daily is a really good place to start. I even recommend up to 4 tablespoons for, again, a great source of fiber for digestive health, but also for hormone balancing. You can add them to oats or buckwheat in the morning, maybe a smoothie, even on top of a salad. Or if you're making a paleo type muffin, you can add it there as well. Strive for 2 to 3 servings of your smash fish weekly. So that may be a salmon dinner one night a week. You can use canned wild salmon or skipjack tuna. Your skipjack and your chunk light tuna are going to be lower in mercury, whereas albacore is going to be higher. So stay on those lower mercury sources. Canned sardines, super inexpensive, super easy to add to some grain-free crackers, maybe a salad, have some vegetables on the side, could be a really quick on-the-go type of a meal. Add avocado to your smoothies, your salads, make guacamole for Mexican night. Make your own salad dressing. If you've ever done that, you will know right away they taste way better than any type of bottle salad dressing that you could purchase. Use your extra virgin olive oil, any type of vinegar that you prefer, and then herbs and spices of your choice. Sprinkle nuts and or seeds on salads, on your oats, even in your smoothies. Make your own grain-free granola with lots of nuts and seeds. So what are our practical takeaways today? When you're meal planning, plan for these healthy fats. Proper oils for heat or cool prep, and add them to your meals. More monounsaturated fats and omega-3 anti-inflammatory fats. Less of the saturated fats and trans fats, which remember are our animal-based and processed foods. So that ends our macronutrients. Next time I'll see you for micronutrients. See you later.